Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Board of Examiners and the Honorable my thesis supervisor, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my undergraduate thesis with the title A Descriptive Study on the Difficulties of 11th Grade Students of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut Academic Year 2017-2018. My name is Raysa Shofia Hasana and this is my thesis presentation. For this slide, I would like to tell about my background of the study, research problem, and research objective for the study. The first one is background of the study. English is a foreign language in our country, so that most students, especially in senior high school, are not familiar with it. Students have limited time to learn English in class, and they do not have enough encouragement to practice outside the class. This case makes students at SMKN 1 Gambut have difficulties to communicate in English. The researcher chose this school because it is in the middle of the three big cities in South Kalimantan, Banjarmasin, Banjarbaru, and Martapura. The researcher intends to conduct a research that will be limited on the questions: what are the students' difficulties in speaking in English speaking skill at 11th grade students of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut. The objective of this research is to discover the students' difficulties in English speaking skill at 11th grade students of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut. This chapter is about review of literature. Language is one of a tool communication with each that always used by human every day. Without language, there will be not communication among human life. Fromkin, Robert, and Hyams 2014 state that when you know a language, you can speak and understood by others who know that language, among more than 1,000 of languages that exist in the world. Noonan 2003 implied that talking is the way toward building and sharing significance through the employment of verbal and nonverbal image in different settings. Raysa 2006 also explained that speaking is an interactive communicative process that involves speakers and listeners. In other words, speakers need to figure out how to adjust their discussion to the audience members, use a scope of approaches to communicate, apply converse with clear up their thoughts, and maintain their discussion to create considering and thinking. Harmer 2007 argues that speaking is a complex skill requiring the simultaneous use of a number of different abilities. There are some experts that explain about the aspect of speaking. The aspects of speaking English, there are pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Factors affect student speaking skill, Scarcella and Oxford 1992 state that there are 6 factors affecting the mastering of English speaking skill. There are grammatical competence, discourse competence, sociolinguistic competence, strategic competence, affective factors, social factors, and teacher-related problems. And in this chapter, the researcher would like to explain about methodology in this research. This research is a qualitative research with descriptive analysis. The subject of this study is 11th grade students of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut. This subject was taken by using a convenience sampling technique. The total of this subject is 36 students from 2 classes, 11 TKJ A, 18 students, and 11 TKJ B, 18 students. To conduct this research, the researcher conduct questionnaire to investigate students' difficulties, and the researcher used interview to deeply know what is the difficulties that they faced. This interview used to verify the data that are obtained from students' questionnaire. For analyzing data, the researcher used a descriptive statistic analysis and descriptive analysis. Chapter 4 is about finding and discussion. As the researcher wanted to give a detail about factors that are contribute the speaking difficulties in as 11th grade students of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut, the researcher used a closed-ended questionnaire that was adapted from IRISMED 2006, as cited in an international journal article from Aaron that was written by Asareke and Afsar 2016. As the result, the data show that I am afraid of making mistakes is ranked the highest in affective related difficulties. The feeling of afraid making any mistakes tend to direct students to become passive learners and avoid making any mistakes. These difficulties then lead to the next highest difficulties, which is their low self-confidence, and as the result, making them more difficult to achieve the goal in learning to speak English. For social-related difficulties, the highest is I have difficulty finding the opportunities to practice my speaking outside the classroom. This is often caused by the everyday use of mother tongue. The students do not have any places to practice their English besides school. Also, the classes do not support students to speak English because not everyone can or in speaking English. In teacher-related difficulties, there is my teacher do not show the tendency to speak English with me outside the classroom when I try to do so is the highest. The need of students to speak English is usually bigger when they are not in the classroom, but sadly, even the English teacher will not speak English outside the classroom. They do not obligate to do so and they do not want to do it. The students and 11th grade students of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut feel that their teacher is not good enough in English. This is very critical because how can we expect the students to be good in English when in reality the teachers do not even have a good speaking skill too? And it is surprising that in linguistic related difficulties, students think that they do not have much of a problem. Students in 11th grades of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut think the same. They do not feel linguistic barrier for this case is grammar affect their ability to speak English fluently. Based on the results of the study, more than half of students still have difficulties in speaking English fluently. The difficulties are very wide and almost every aspect of categories there is at least one student that having the difficulties in that area. Based on the rank from the highest to the lowest, surprisingly, 6.65% of students or more than 1 per 4 of total students have difficulties in teacher-related difficulties. This is really need to go on surface and need a lot of improvement in almost all sectors of education. But with only one sample of education of school, the researcher cannot take a conclusion of what happened in education sector widely in Banjar Regency. In this discussion, the researcher wants to do deep analysis of each difficulties area and figure out the solution to solve those difficulties. These are several conclusions. 1. The highest difficulties based on questionnaire data is an affective related difficulty. I have difficulty finding the opportunities to practice my speaking outside the classroom, which stand at 3.75 mean score. It implied that many students in 11th grade of TEKNIK Computer and Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut have this difficulty. The second highest difficulty is from teacher-related difficulty. My teachers do not show the tendency to speak English with me outside the classroom when I try to do so, with the mean of 3.6%. It implied that most of students think that this difficulty is significant in 11th grade of Teknik Komputer dan Jaringan Department of SMKN 1 Gambut. Number 3, from the result of interview, the difficulties are similar to questionnaire, and to explain more, the students think that their lack of vocabulary and the hard way to pronouncing the words is making them slow learner to reach the target, to become fluent in English speaking. Sometimes they do not recognize the word that speaker said because they cannot recognize how the way some words pronounce. And for the suggestion, the teachers should be more creative and help teacher to make the teaching and learning atmosphere become more fun in the classroom, so the students will not feel demotivated or bored in the speaking class, and students should not feeling hesitate, shy, or afraid of making mistakes while speaking English, so they can improve their speaking ability. The students are hoped to improve their basic cognitive of English, enrich their vocabulary knowledge. Besides that, with the help of internet, it is must thing to do for the teacher to update the material for their teaching, and the various teaching techniques should be applied. That's all from my presentation. I hope my research can be useful for you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.